The sky is already on fire. At 25,000 feet, the air shudders with explosions, black bursts of flak tearing open the clouds. Metal rattles. Engines scream. Over the radio, a voice cuts through the static. Bandits. 12 o'clock high, multiple fighters diving. A split second later they hit. German interceptors slash through the formation, guns blazing. Tracers rip past the cockpit like molten needles. A bomber ahead erupts into flames, spiraling down in silence. There's no time to look, no time to think, only react. Hands tighten on the controls. The aircraft shudders under stress, diving, climbing, twisting through a sky that has turned into a battlefield of smoke and steel. Every second alive is borrowed time. And yet, somehow, he doesn't fall. Because this wasn't just any aircraft. This was the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, a machine built to fly into hell and come back out. The formation is breaking. Not by choice but by force. Another flak burst detonates just off the right wing, the shockwave slamming through the aircraft like a hammer. The controls vibrate violently. Instruments flicker. For a moment, it feels like the entire sky is collapsing inward. Hold formation. Hold formation. The radio crackles, but the voice is already fading into chaos. Below, thousands of feet down, the ground is invisible, hidden beneath a suffocating layer of smoke and winter haze. Up here there is no escape route. Only altitude, and enemies closing fast. A shadow flashes across the canopy. Too fast to track. Then another. The attack isn't coming from one direction anymore, it's everywhere. German fighters tear through the bomber stream, weaving between formations, striking with surgical precision. One locks onto a straggler, just a few seconds of gunfire, and the aircraft disintegrates into fragments of fire and falling metal. No parachutes. No second chances. Inside the cockpit, time distorts. Every sound sharpens. The metallic rattle of the airframe, the thunder of the engine, the distant echo of gunfire punching through the sky. Oxygen runs thin. Breath comes in short bursts. Hands tighten instinctively, knuckles white against cold steel controls. This isn't flying anymore. This is survival. And yet, through all of it, through the flak, the fighters, the collapsing formation, there's something else holding the line. A machine that refuses to break. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt wasn't designed for elegance or agility in the traditional sense. It was built for something far more important in a sky like this. Endurance. It carries weight like no other fighter. It absorbs damage that should end a mission instantly. It keeps flying when logic says it shouldn't. And in moments like this, when the sky itself feels hostile, it becomes more than just an aircraft. It becomes the only thing standing between a pilot and the void. Another burst rocks the air nearby. A warning light flashes. Something is wrong. But the engine is still running. The wings are still holding. And as long as that's true, there's still a way out. Why this aircraft mattered. By 1943, the air war over Europe had reached a brutal turning point. The Allies needed to strike deep into Nazi Germany, factories, oil refineries, rail networks, the industrial heart of the war machine. But bombing missions were deadly. American bombers like the B-17 Flying Fortress could deliver devastation, but without protection they were vulnerable. German fighters, especially the Messerschmitt Bf 109 and Focke-Wulf Fw 190, were fast, lethal, and experienced. The solution had to be something stronger. Something that could escort bombers deep into enemy territory, survive the worst conditions imaginable, and fight its way out. That solution became the P-47 Thunderbolt. Pilots gave it a nickname. The Jug. Not for elegance, but for sheer, brutal power. 2. Technical advantages: power, firepower, survival. The P-47 was unlike anything else in the sky. It was massive for a fighter, powered by an enormous radial engine that delivered over 2,000 horsepower. At high altitude, it thrived where other aircraft struggled. Top speed, over 430 miles per hour. Armament, 8.50 caliber machine guns, each capable of shredding enemy aircraft in seconds. But its true strength wasn't just firepower. It was durability. The Thunderbolt could absorb punishment that would destroy other fighters. Pilots often returned with bullet holes tearing through wings, oil leaking from damaged engines, entire sections of fuselage missing. And still, it flew. It also carried bombs and rockets, making it deadly not just in the air, but against ground targets. In later years, it became one of the most feared ground attack aircraft of the war. This wasn't just a fighter. It was a flying tank. 3. Combat story: Into the Fire. Winter 1944. Over-occupied Europe. A squadron of P-47s escorts a formation of B-17s heading toward a heavily defended industrial target deep inside Germany. Altitude 28,000 feet. Visibility poor. Then the sky erupts. Flak bursts everywhere, dark explosions ripping through the formation. One bomber loses an engine. Another begins to fall behind. That's when the German fighters arrive. FW-190s dive out of the sun. Fast, precise, deadly. One Thunderbolt pilot, barely 22 years old, pushes his aircraft into a steep climb to intercept. His vision tunnels from the G-forces. His breath shortens. The world narrows to a single target. He fires. 8 guns roar at once, tracers slicing through the sky. The German fighter breaks apart mid-air. But there's no time to celebrate. Another enemy aircraft locks onto him, gunfire ripping across his wing. Warning lights flash. The cockpit fills with the smell of burning oil. He should be dead. Instead he dives. The P-47 plunges through flak, through cloud, through chaos, engine screaming at maximum power. The enemy overshoots. He pulls up hard, re-engages, fires again. Another kill. And somehow, against all odds, he turns back toward base. Alive. For enemy perspective, why opponents feared it. German pilots quickly learned something terrifying about the Thunderbolt. It refused to die. They could outturn it. They could sometimes outclimb it. But destroying it? That was another story. Reports from German squadrons described P-47s continuing to fight after sustaining heavy damage. Engines smoking, wings torn, controls barely responsive. Worse, its diving speed made it nearly impossible to chase. If a Thunderbolt pilot chose to disengage, he could dive faster than almost anything in the sky. German fighters that tried to follow often pushed their aircraft beyond safe limits. The result? They broke apart. The Thunderbolt didn't just fight. It dictated the terms of engagement. 5. Strategic impact, turning the tide. The introduction of long-range escort fighters like the P-47 changed the entire air war. Bombers were no longer alone. With Thunderbolts guarding them, Allied bombing missions became far more effective, and far more dangerous for Germany. Industrial targets were hit repeatedly. Supply lines collapsed. Fuel shortages crippled the Luftwaffe. And when the P-47 turned its attention to ground attack during and after D-Day, it became a nightmare for German forces on the ground, destroying tanks, convoys, and troop positions with ruthless efficiency. It didn't just survive the war. It helped win it, the edge of breaking. What made the P-47 truly exceptional wasn't just its specifications. It was how it performed under extreme combat stress. In prolonged engagements over Europe, pilots often found themselves outnumbered and deep inside enemy-controlled airspace. Fuel calculations became critical. Ammunition ran low. Every decision had consequences. And yet, the Thunderbolt gave them options. In high-altitude combat, it maintained stability even when pushed to its limits. Its turbo-supercharger allowed it to retain power where many enemy fighters began to struggle. This meant American pilots could engage, or disengage, on their own terms. That control was everything. During bomber escort missions, P-47 pilots developed aggressive interception tactics. Instead of waiting defensively, they would climb above bomber formations and dive directly into incoming German fighters, disrupting their attack patterns before they could reach the bombers. Speed became a weapon. Altitude became leverage. And surprise became survival. Even when damaged, the Thunderbolt could execute high-speed dives exceeding 500 miles per hour, escaping situations that would have been fatal in other aircraft. Many pilots later described these moments not as tactical maneuvers, but as desperate escapes from certain death. And yet, they worked. Because the aircraft held together. Because it kept responding. Because it refused to fail when everything else did. War doesn't remember every name. It doesn't record every moment a pilot stared death in the face, and kept flying anyway. But machines like the P-47 Thunderbolt carry those stories in their scars. They tell of missions where survival wasn't expected. Of skies so full of fire that escape seemed impossible. And of pilots who trusted a brutal, unbreakable aircraft to carry them through it all. The Thunderbolt was never the most graceful fighter of World War II. It didn't rely on elegance or precision. It relied on strength, on resilience, on the raw, unrelenting will to endure. And that made all the difference. Because in a war defined by destruction, sometimes survival is the greatest victory of all. And somewhere above those shattered skies, a pilot flew into hell. And came back. Long after the war ended, the stories remained. Not just in official records or mission logs, but in the memories of the men who flew through skies that seemed designed to destroy them. They remembered the sound of the engine, steady, powerful, almost defiant against the chaos around it. They remembered the weight of the aircraft, how it felt solid, dependable, like something that could take punishment and still bring them home. And most of all, they remembered the moments when everything should have ended, but didn't. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt became more than a machine in those memories. It became a lifeline, a second chance, a reason why some pilots saw the ground again, when others didn't. Its legacy isn't just measured in enemy aircraft destroyed or missions completed. It's measured in survival, in the quiet, unspoken reality that many who flew it lived because of what it could endure. In the skies over Europe, where flak turned clouds into explosions and fighters hunted relentlessly, survival was never guaranteed. It had to be earned. And the Thunderbolt helped its pilots earn it. Even today, restored examples sit in museums and airfields, silent now but far from forgotten. Their scarred metal and heavy frames still carry the weight of history, reminding us of a time when the sky itself was a battlefield. When every mission was a gamble, and every return was a victory. Because war is often remembered through its grand strategies and decisive battles. But sometimes, its true story is found in a single aircraft, damaged, outnumbered, and barely holding together, still flying, still fighting, still refusing to fall. And in that refusal, it gave its pilots something rare in war. Not just the chance to fight, but the chance to come home.